So what if the butterflies in your stomach on a first date aren't actually a sign of true love?
Right, what if they're not?
Like, what if they are actually just your body's early warning system telling you to run?
Which is a pretty terrifying thought.
It really is. But today, we are taking everything that pop culture taught you about the spark, and we're throwing it right out the window.
Completely out the window.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are bypassing that whole Hollywood narrative of chaotic, anxiety-inducing romance to decode the actual foundational standards that predict lasting love.
And this is so important for you, the listener, to hear.
Absolutely. And our source material for this deep dive comes from a rather unexpected place. It is a comprehensive relationship guide from a company called Weddizer.
Which, naturally raises an eyebrow.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because Weddizer is a platform that is dedicated to wedding planning. So you would probably assume their literature focuses heavily on like floral arrangements or catering budgets.
Right, seating charts, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But their core philosophy in this text is actually entirely preventative. They argue that successful marriages do not begin when you say yes to a proposal or even when the venue is booked.
They begin way earlier.
Right. They begin on the very first date. The psychological standards that you establish on day one basically become the permanent architectural blueprint for the entire relationship.
So the premise here is that if you pour a crooked foundation on date one, I mean, no amount of expensive wedding cake is going to stop the house from collapsing 5 years later.
Yeah, that's exactly the analogy.
And this matters so much because the modern dating landscape is it's a minefield of information overload right now.
Oh, it's exhausting.
There are endless conflicting rules about, who texts first, how long to wait, how to play the game. But the Weddizer guide just cuts through all of that noise.
They really do.
They argue that healthy relationships are actually mathematically simple at their core. They are built on respect, honesty, consistency, and emotional maturity.
And setting those standards early, it isn't some exercise in demanding perfection from a partner, because obviously nobody is perfect.
Right.
It actually functions as a psychological filtration system. So when you communicate your self-worth clearly, you instantly make yourself highly unattractive to people who are just looking for like a quick ego boost.
Or people who lack the emotional maturity to handle a real partnership.
Exactly. It is the ultimate shortcut. You save months or honestly sometimes years of emotional turmoil by simply letting your standards weed out the incompatible people before you ever even get attached.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. How do we actually apply this filtration system in real life? Because the very first major concept the source tackles kind of flips the script on how most of us were socialized to date.
It really does. It takes aim right at the spark.
Yeah, it pits the mythical spark against consistency. Because we are so conditioned by movies to crave the grand romantic gesture, like the spontaneous weekend trip to Paris, or a surprise bouquet of 100 roses.
That intense, overwhelming excitement that just keeps you up at night.
Right. But the text treats that sheer excitement almost like a distraction. It prioritizes something far less flashy, which is predictable, reliable consistency.
Well, we have to look at the mechanism of why we actually crave that massive gesture in the first place.
Okay, yeah, why do we?
It is a massive dopamine spike. The grand gesture feels like a movie scene, and it chemically bonds you to that specific moment. But people frequently confuse that sheer physiological excitement with actual relationship stability.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and when a connection is fueled purely by these massive highs, it is usually masking massive lows. A healthy, sustainable dynamic just doesn't require a skywriting proposal to validate its existence.
It relies on a baseline of steady behavior instead.
Exactly. Steady, reliable behavior.
So I'm picturing the difference between buying a reliable commuter car and a flashy vintage sports car.
That is a great way to look at it.
Like the sports car looks amazing in the driveway,
Mhm.
and it is totally thrilling for the 20 minutes it actually runs, but you are constantly stressed about it breaking down on the highway.
You're always waiting for the check engine light.
Right. Whereas the commuter car isn't going to turn any heads, but it starts every single morning.
Exactly.
I do struggle with this a little bit, though. If we are looking for the commuter car, are we saying that excitement is actually the enemy of stability here? Like, do we just resign ourselves to being bored?
No, not at all. Excitement is absolutely not the enemy. The danger arises when excitement is the only load-bearing pillar in the relationship.
Oh, I see.
Because when you strip away the grand gestures, you have to ask what is actually left. The source defines the actual markers of consistency, and they aren't boring, they are grounding.
So what do those markers look like practically?
We are talking about regular, transparent communication, keeping a promise, following through on plans you made on Tuesday for Saturday without needing to be reminded,
Right, just doing what you said you would do.
making time for each other in a way that feels effortless, and just showing genuine curiosity about the mundane, everyday parts of your life.
So it's like the random Tuesday afternoon text that says, hey, I know you had that brutal budget meeting this morning. How did it go? It
Yes.
doesn't spike your adrenaline, but it proves they are mentally present in your life even when you aren't in the same room.
And that presence is what creates emotional safety. I mean, think about the physical toll of early dating for most people.
Oh, it's exhausting. The anxiety is unreal.
The overanalyzing of every single text message or every prolonged silence. But when a partner is consistently reliable, all of that anxiety just vanishes.
Because you don't have to guess anymore.
Exactly. You never have to decode their silence because they do not use silence as a weapon. Removing that guesswork is what allows your nervous system to actually relax.
Which is kind of a prerequisite for genuine intimacy,
100%.
but expecting that steady, predictable behavior is kind of a trap if you haven't actually given the other person the instruction manual on how to treat you.
Right. You can't measure consistency against a standard you never vocalized.
Which bridges perfectly into the text's emphasis on building an architecture for safe communication and boundaries right out of the gate.
Yeah, consistency requires parameters.
Yeah.
And the source highlights two foundational pillars here that honestly, they sound a bit like corporate HR buzzwords.
They really do.
But they operate very differently in romance. We're talking about active listening and a respectful conflict resolution.
Active listening is one of those terms that gets thrown around so much, it almost loses its meaning entirely.
It really does.
But the Weddizer text moves past the standard definition of just, nodding and repeating back what someone said. It frames it as an exercise in disarming your ego.
Disarming the ego is key here.
Yeah, listening to understand rather than just treating the conversation as a waiting room until it's your turn to speak.
Because when ego gets involved, communication basically turns into a competition.
How so?
Well, if you tell a partner about a frustrating day, and they immediately counter with a story about why their day was actually harder, they aren't listening. They are competing for the victim role.
Oh, well, yeah, that happens all the time.
Healthy communication requires holding space for the other person's reality without making it about yourself. And that directly influences conflict resolution.
Right.
The goal of a healthy relationship isn't to eliminate disagreements. I mean, that is impossible.
Yeah, you're going to fight eventually.
The goal is to solve the problem without character assassination. It is attacking the issue, not attacking the person.
And preventing those disagreements from turning toxic often comes down to boundaries. Now, I want to play devil's advocate for the listener here for a second, because the word boundary has a major PR problem.
It really does. People get very defensive about it.
Right. Most people view boundaries as these keep out signs on a barbed wire fence. Like if I tell someone I am newly dating, listen, I need my alone time on Sunday mornings, it feels like I'm pushing them away, like I'm installing a wall.
But the guide describes them completely differently.
Yeah, it describes them more like the rules of the road.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it, because the rules of the road don't stop the traffic. They just prevent the cars from crashing into each other.
Right, they keep things moving safely.
The source completely validates that boundaries are what actually hold the relationship together. When you clearly state your needs, whether that is protecting your career goals or maintaining your friendships outside the relationship.
Or honestly, just being able to say no without getting a guilt trip.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are literally handing the other person a roadmap on how to love you successfully.
So establishing a boundary is actually an act of deep vulnerability.
It is.
You are taking off the armor and saying, here is the exact mechanism of how I operate, and here's what I need to feel safe with you.
Which is exactly why a healthy partner will embrace your boundaries rather than attack them. A toxic person views a boundary as a personal insult or like a challenge they have to overcome.
Oh, that's such a good distinction.
If you say, I have to study for my licensing exam this weekend, so I can't go out, a toxic partner complains that you prioritize work over them. They basically force you to manage their disappointment.
Which is exhausting.
Right. But a healthy partner says, understood, I will drop off a coffee and leave you to it. That mutual respect is the literal concrete of the relationship's foundation.
Okay, so if we take this out into the field, you're on the dates, you are setting the rules of the road, and you are communicating. How the other person reacts to your boundaries provides you with critical data.
This is where we get into the flags.
Right, this is where the text dives into the famous modern dialogue about green flags and red flags.
And the Weddizer guide makes a very poignant pivot regarding this whole internet obsession with flags.
Yeah, because internet culture has conditioned us to act like hypervigilant detectives. Like, we're just obsessively hunting for red flags and reasons to bolt.
It's a very defensive posture. But the source urges a psychological shift here. Stop playing pure defense and start actively scouting for green flags.
Which completely changes the energy of the date. You aren't just waiting for them to mess up. You are looking for evidence of accountability. You're looking for emotional stability and mutual effort.
And one detail that really stood out in the text was observing their kindness toward others,
Oh, yeah?
specifically service workers or family members.
Waiter test.
Exactly. The mechanism there is crucial because anyone can fake charm and kindness toward you when they are actively trying to win you over. It is essentially a performance.
Right.
But they rarely maintain that performance for someone who can do absolutely nothing for them, like a waiter or a cab driver.
So how they treat someone they view as